Hi, my name's Cecilia Poullain, and welcome to this episode of Brave New Women. All around the world, there are amazing, ordinary women doing extraordinary things. Brave New Women is about giving those women a platform and a voice, and it's about changing the way that women are perceived. And it's a way of inspiring all of us to do the things that we've always wanted to do. Today I'm talking to Kelly Rigby, and Kelly is a writer, a writing coach and an editor. She's written 2 short films and numerous short stories, including an 8-word story that appeared on a billboard in the city of Brisbane in Australia. Kelly particularly loves memoir writing, and she has had essays published in a Louise Hay book called Modern Day Miracles, and also in a COVID anthology, which was distributed by the Royal Historical Society of Queensland. Her first novel, which is called Fox, is going to be released later this year, so that's very exciting. Kelly edits and assesses manuscripts in many different genres and has taught creative writing and story structure to both adults and children. And her writers have had books released by major Australian publishers, and they've been long listed for prestigious Australian writing awards like the Rochelle Prize for Emerging Writers. They've won Varuna Fellowships, and that's the Varuna Fellowships are highly prestigious fellowships, which are in New South Wales in Australia. She teaches at the Writers' Studio in Bronte in Sydney, and she also teaches online. So welcome, Kelly.
Thank you.
Tell me about the 8-word story on the billboard. What's that all about?
It was sort of the Queensland Writers' Centre. They had this, an 8-word story, and they had different themes like loss, love, and you could apply to put a story in, and they listed on their website a number of ones that were shortlisted, and then ones that made it to the top went on a billboard, and Brisbane traffic could see it. So I actually wasn't living in Brisbane at the time, but I was all sort of, sitting by the computer, waiting for it to come up, and I had friends,
And what were your 8 words?
That one I think was, oh God, I should have remembered. She went for milk and never came back.
Fantastic.
But I had a few selected, but that was the one I think I have a picture of. Yeah, She went for milk and never came back.
So when did you become a writer?
Well, it's always a hard question to ask a writer, because we often, like many people, were writing quite young. In terms of, you mentioned I'm interested in the memoir writing, and I was, writing that kind of thing really young. And the first time I tried to write a novel, I was 12. And it was based on the idea of Trixie Belden. I was obsessed with Trixie Belden mysteries. And
who's Trixie Belden?
Trixie Belden is this series, kind of like the Famous Five.
Okay.
But American. I love the Famous Five too, by the way. But Trixie Belden and like Nancy Drew, it's a similar thing. But Nancy Drew is all about just like Nancy Drew, whereas Trixie Belden has this group of kids, they're friends, and they all are part of the mystery solving. So anyway, I was obsessed with those. And so my first book I ever wrote, which was probably like 25,000 words, was, a Trixie Belden inspired story. But I was writing in adulthood for a job, basically, as a copywriter, straight out of uni. And then, I started trying to write a novel, and I had no luck getting to the end of it. The first one, which my nana was very excited about, was called Love on the Kitchen Bench. which was about, flatmates and romance, because I had many flatmates in my 20s. And then when I went to study postgraduate at studies in creative writing at UTS, and the whole idea was I was like, I want to learn to write a novel and actually finish it to the end. But then I got really into screenwriting and instead wrote a couple of short films. And then I still couldn't seem to get past like the 40,000 word mark in a novel before I was convinced, as all novelists are, that it's total claptrap. Actually, it was the writer studio who I worked with the last 6 years who were the first time I actually got to the end of a first draft. So university didn't do it for me. They did.
And is Fox that first draft?
No, Fox is the third book.
Mm.
But the first two novels I wrote, they never really turned out how I wanted them, in the terms of I just wasn't comfortable with the genre and the message, and I ended up drawing them basically, which isn't uncommon. A lot of people, their first book published will not be the first book they wrote. So,
and tell me about Fox.
So Fox, So Fox is the third one. And Fox is what we call like an urban fantasy, paranormal. So I think it's a bit chick lit in the sense it's a little funny. And it's about this woman who has heightened abilities, and she's what we call a magicant. And magicans are this in this world. So it's a normal world, but in this world, magicans are people that have been like blessed by Archangel Michael to be protectors of humanity, and they have a mark on the back of their neck. And anyone who has an ability and they don't have a mark on the back of their neck are seen as being from this other group of people called the Vipera. And the Vipera are more, from the Lucifer side of things. She actually Fox was not born a magican. She becomes a magican with a near-death experience. So she is an outsider amongst her people. And Fox is going to be the first in a series, and it's set in Mexico City mostly.
Is it for adults or for adolescents?
It's for adults.
Adults, yeah. Sounds great.
Too racy for I'm sure teens will read it, but it's a little too racy to be
definitely adults. Yeah.
So,
and I wanted to ask you, Kelly, what is it about writing that you find the hardest?
For me, as a writer, because I can answer that question for me and I can answer it on behalf of what I find most of my students. But for me as a writer, the hardest thing is reining in all my ideas. So I am someone who has an awful lot of ideas, and I plan and what we call pants. So there's this terminology in creative writing. Are you a planner, a plotter, or are you a pantser? Plotter plans everything out, like the structure of the story. Maybe they know every single scene, and then they write it. A pantser basically wings it. They have an idea for a character, or maybe they've got an opening scene. Maybe they only know the end. And then they just let the words spill onto the page and just madly type. And then at some point they look at everything they've written and go, what am I actually talking about? And they move pieces around, and that's how they write a book. So for me, I'm a combination of both. I plot to the extent of I plot major arcs. I know what the inciting incident is, like what sort of spurs the story into taking off. So, and then I know what the lowest point is. I usually know the middle and I know the end. But what I find is that because my creativity then tends to take off. And by the middle of the book, I often have too many lanes, and then I've got to work out how to get to the end. And then in the editing process, which is my job, I then have to kind of go, well, what's the best line, through the story? And I don't enjoy it when it's mine. I enjoy it for other people's, but I don't enjoy it when it's mine.
The editing process.
No, God, not at the end. I do initially where you rewrite and edit, but when you're doing really trying to make every scene as good as it can be, and I'm a bit of a perfectionist, which serves me very well in my job, but it means that I tend to question myself a lot about, have I chosen the right path? Is this as good as it could be? Or maybe that could happen. And because my imagination tends to go, oh, this, then, yeah, that's the biggest problem for me.
And what does writing bring you?
Writing and just working with stories, because I have to say, working with stories I enjoy as much as writing, and it is kind of my everything. I think that stories are how we make sense of the world. It's how we make sense of our relationships with other people. They are often maybe how we will process trauma. And writing and storytelling is just so beneficial in like a multitude of ways. It gives us release. Maybe we watch a rom-com, or we read, something like Marion Keyes, who's just a lovely, joyous, sort of funny writer. So you might do something like that to escape from your life. Or you read something because you want to learn something, or you want to have your horizons expanded. All of this. So for me, stories they like what life's all about. It's how you interpret everything is a story, which is why, like, I used to, in my past career, in my 20s, I was in copywriting, and it's all relies on stories as well. Because stories are, if you can tell stories, then you can sell people things. Because that's how the brain is wired.
Yeah.
It's wired to remember stories.
And Kelly, I know that you've had a pretty rough year or so in terms of deaths and if people have been very close to you. Do you mind if I ask, how has writing helped you through that?
Writing and working with creative people in my job is how I found a reason to get up on the days that my kids would go to their fathers. I share custody with my ex-husband, and when the children are here, everything became about them. And it was lovely to lose myself in that. But they would go, and then I was adrift, utterly adrift. And I would lie there in bed thinking, why? Why do I even need to get up? Why do I care? I had to re-envisage my whole future and find new things to hope for. And how I got through, they say a big thing with grief is take it day by day, minute by minute. And creativity is how I did that. It's how I did that. I wrote my feelings down. I journaled pages and pages. When I had better times, I would work with my clients, and then I would become inspired by their stories. I can't help myself. I just get excited, and then I would forget. And then on hard days, I would lie on the couch with the Netflix, and again, stories of what I lost myself in. So it's, yeah. And then even my other great love is music. Music is storytelling in another form. So, yeah, stories are everything.
And when did you become an editor and writing coach? And why?
Why? Oh, why? Because funny enough, I wanted to, yeah, the dream was I'd love to be a novelist, memoirist, travel the world, live wherever, write books, sell lots of them. Yeah, that was the dream. And then I had to think of very practical things like providing for my family. And so I did things like editing of business manuscripts, like what do you call it, reports, tenders, and then website writing, copywriting brochures. And then from that, I went into editing, and I started editing stories and parts of people's novels for free. And I did that just as part of my own creative process. So I studied novel writing with lots of people in Australia. So I've done it at university. I've done it with the Writers Studio. I've done it with the Australian Writers Centre. I've done it with amazing people like Pamela Freeman. I've even studied with Kate Forsyth, who you've interviewed.
Oh, wow. Wow.
So, yeah, I've studied with so many people, and I would meet other writers, and then everybody said to me, "You're just naturally so good at story structure." So there are two sides of editing. There's line editing, which is just getting the words perfect and making sure everything's correct. And I'd done that for forever in various forms. But that, it was just a job. And when I started studying more and more writing and meeting more writers and then working with them and workshopping their novels, what I discovered is that I was really good at the more structural element of editing and what we call comprehensive editing. And so then I did a diploma of editing, and there you go. It just sort of built on like that. And after my divorce, I was 41 when my marriage broke up, and I'd sort of been a secondary earner for a few years. He travelled a bit with work, and I had two young kids. And I kind of had to think about, okay, so what next? How do I earn a living and provide a future for my family? And I knew I didn't want to keep copywriting, but I knew that I could. So I decided that I would take a risk, and I would try and make money doing what everybody kept telling me I was good at, and that I wasn't charging them for. So, and I had already had a teaching experience. So I'd trained as a teacher of English literacy and international students. So I had already had teaching experience, writing experience, and had done the editing. I'd sort of, studied at university and had the business and marketing. And then I just morphed it all together. And it just grew and grew and grew. And yeah, so I'm 49 now. That was 41. So.
Mm. And what skills do you need to be a good writing coach? Or what skills do you particularly have?
Well, I think I am. I'm a good editor, people say, but I think I am better as a writing coach and as a structural editor because I have an intrinsic ability to read your words and know what you're trying to say. And I can know that I know an awful lot about story structure, and I've taught story structure for years now. So I also know how to ask you the right questions for you to work out what you're trying to say in your novel. And then I can see where it's flat. I can see how things can be moved around to work better. And that's something I didn't get trained in. That's my gift, I guess. It sounds so wanky to say that, but
no, it's absolutely, absolutely.
People say to me, "Oh, how do you work with so many people?" Sometimes I'd work with 40 people at once.
Gosh.
That's 40 novels.
Wow.
At least 80 characters, because you've got an antagonist and a protagonist, plus all the nuances of the writer. Like we're creative people, we're a bit neurotic at times. And I just keep all of that there. And they say, well, how do you do it? And I'm like, I don't know. I just do. So,
and people who are being coached, what do they really need?
They need someone to pull them up when they've got stuck. They need someone to build them up when they're very down on themselves. They need someone to offer insight into what their story needs and be willing to tell them how to improve, but not destroy the fragility of their creativity as well. So when I first started with a writer studio years ago, I was more of an editor than a teacher. That was so weird because I taught people who, like, English was their second language. So my teaching, I had the teaching skills in a certain way, but I hadn't taught an awful lot of creative writing. I'd only just started doing it. And so when I worked with people initially, I would switch automatically into editor mode. So I was more like, so you can do this and this is working and this isn't working. And I was much more matter of fact about it in the beginning. Nice, but matter of fact. And then what I learned to allow for in that first year is, at what stage is this writer in the journey? Are they new to novel writing and therefore very fragile? They need me to lift them more and go, I love that, and really point out all the things about their ideas that are wonderful, and then say, well, you could do this little thing here and this would make it even better. And that's what people need. And I didn't have that at first. That I learnt. And I think that is actually the best thing about me as a coach, is that I know how to kick your writing up to the next level, especially in terms of scene writing. I've actually really got it down pat now how a scene should work, and I can explain that in very simple terms that people understand, and then their scene writing improves. But then I can also keep them going and help them work out what their project is and finish their project. And I think that's what you need a coach for. Whereas an editor just could tell you, this is what's wrong with it, this is what's good with it.
So an editor is much more blunt and direct, whereas a writing coach actually needs to be protecting the creative process and nurturing the creative process.
That's right, and helping you grow as a writer. So, with my private clients, I want to know, are you just trying to improve your craft for now? Do you want to be a career writer? Is it just this one project? Because if you want to be a career writer, then my job is also to kind of go, okay, so we're working on this book now. Now we're getting near the end of that one. So what's the next idea? Let's start working on the next, and because if you want to be a career writer, you've got to produce work. And but look, I'm better at being a coach than I am a writer, really. Because it's I get very enthusiastic and carried away and always seem to take on more and more people. And then I don't leave myself enough time to actually do my own writing. I'm trying to rectify that.
Well, maybe that is where your skill is and your joy is.
To a large extent, it is, yeah. And that, I think that's something that I probably realised more in the last couple of years, is how much am I a teacher, and I'm a bit of like in film terms, they call them story doctors, people that come in and work out how to fix a film. I can do that to books. And that's what I do in my assessments with people. I assess their books and I tell them, this is how you can fix it. This is how you can make it better, and this is how you can make it commercially viable. And yeah, in many ways, I actually really love that. And I love working with other people because I'm a people person, probably more than I love to sit by myself and write. But I do have ideas I want to get out there. So it's a balance,
Yeah.
But yeah.
Have
I
you
wouldn't
had any?
if I sold a book for $2 million, I would still teach.
Okay. Yeah.
I wouldn't stop.
Yeah. Well, that's telling you something, isn't it? Yeah.
Yeah.
And have you had any students who you've seen going from a new writer who is very unsure of themselves to becoming fully, a fully fledged writer who's becoming confident and is being published? And have you seen people like that?
Absolutely, yeah. Absolutely. Like, one of my more successful people that I worked with story structure, teaching her story structure. And the second draft of her book, and she now has, Maya Linnell, she's got her third book coming out this year with Alan and Unwin. And Tanya Nillerstein, she has a book out now, a little Viking romance, actually. And when I first started working with Tanya, she had wonderful creativity, but she didn't really know an awful lot about how to write. It was clear that she's a successful woman in her day job. So it was clear that she could communicate, but she didn't know how to write a novel, but she very much wanted to. So she's someone I worked with many years ago when she was starting, and then she went away and she studied, with other people and that other things, and worked with, and then came back and started working with me with another book, then went away and then got something assessed and then went away, and then I'm her editor as well. So it's exciting. Yeah. And she was nominated for like a best new romance author in Australia, at the Romance Writers of Australia Awards. She didn't win, but she was nominated, which is
fantastic.
Yeah. So I have, and I just a friend of mine who's going off to Verona soon with her YA book. She became a friend because I first started teaching her years ago, and she's just, she always had a certain gift, but to be able to write nicely and then write a novel, they're two different things. To write a novel, you've got to sustain the story, the character development, the pace, all of that stuff over an entire book. So she has, done brilliantly. So, and I've got, she's with this part of this fellowship, she is sort of in the running to be seen. I forget which publisher it is that has first dibs on the book if they want it. So crossing my fingers for her.
Oh, how incredibly rewarding for you to be able to see
it is
grow like that. Yeah.
But, I've had people that I'm writing a book on yoga with my yoga teacher, and that's something for her, and that's also rewarding, and people that I've worked with to write stories for their grandkids. It doesn't always have to be something commercial. It's creativity, writing stories. If you have a story in you, I think get it out. Get it out. Explore it, even if it's for your family, that's still, your life will be richer for it. Absolutely.
Two questions to finish, Kelly. So the first one is, what's the bravest thing you've ever done?
To be honest, it's probably starting my business when I was a single mother of an 8-year-old and a 15-month-old.
Gosh.
And I was really like, I should do something sensible. I have all these degrees. I should go do something sensible. I knew I couldn't try and get an editing job in-house because I couldn't go work in Sydney. I couldn't do those kind of hours, with 2 young children. And so I was like, this is really what I want to do. I want to teach people. I want to work for myself and be able to work anywhere in the world if I want to. And I achieved all of that.
Wow, fantastic.
So, as long as there's internet, I could teach.
Yeah. Well, you're teaching me, and I'm living in Paris, so
That's it. That's it. And you're not an anomaly. I work with people in New York and in England and Ireland, it's, Singapore, Hong Kong.
Mm-hmm.
So, no, it's fabulous. So that's probably the bravest thing I've ever done. I've done plenty of stupid / brave things because I'm a big traveller. So I have lots of crazy stories of things I've done backpacking over the years. But to me, I'm most proud of that. It was a big risk to take. And a lot of people said to me, is that a job? Is that a job, teaching people how to write and helping them with books? Don't you have to finish your master's for that, Kelly? And I was like, well, I'm not going to go back and finish my master's. I didn't think it was worth the money. And I made it happen.
Fantastic. Fantastic. And the last question is, has being a woman had an impact? What impact has it had on your life? Has it been positive, negative? There been?
In the past, I might have said that I could see a lot of negatives to being a woman. There's a lot of talk, particularly in Australia at the moment, but around the world, about violence against women, and I have experienced that. I've written about it, and I was raised in a way to be like my brother, to not be gender, particularly different by different gender. I was told I could do whatever I wanted when I was a kid, which was a wonderful blessing that my parents gave me. But when I got out into the real world, I didn't find that was true. And I particularly, when I got married, I found that things were not, they were not the same for men and women. And the expectations of me were different to the expectations of him. And the bar was a lot lower before he was wonderful versus me. He is wonderful. He's a lovely bloke, my ex-husband, but it's not the point. It's the bar. It was like, oh, he takes care of the kids and feeds them. Oh, isn't he amazing? Is he? I don't know. Isn't he a father?
Yeah.
So there's those sort of things. I feel like I've battled a lot to try to return to the state that I mentally had as a child, which is that my brother and I are the same. We have the same opportunities. We are going to have the same opportunities in life. And then I found it wasn't like that. And I've struggled a lot in life to try to get back to that sense of stasis of no, I can have the same. But, to be honest, the last few years, I think it's wonderful to be a woman because I got to give birth. I just feel so much about life and I can embrace that and I can be strong. I can earn my own living. I've taken my son to Europe, which was a dream I had, that when he was a baby, I was like, I'm going to continue my traveling ways. And when my kids are in high school, I'm going to take them anywhere in the world they want to go. I did that. I achieved that, even though I got divorced and I was, just by myself. So I can be strong. I can be soft. So, yeah, I am a woman. Hear me roar. I'm good to be a woman. It's good to be a woman.
Fantastic.
And, but I still do hope that it's even better for when my daughter is a woman. Absolutely, I do.
Well, thank you, Kelly. It's been great talking to you and just hearing about, a very unique perspective you have about as a book editor and as a writing coach. It's been fantastic to hear. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Cecilia. It was wonderful to have this chat, and you made me think on a Monday night.
I hope you've enjoyed this episode of Brave New Women. Certain podcast sites such as Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, or Podchaser let you leave a rating and a review. The more ratings and reviews we get, the more people will listen and the more these women's stories will be shared. So I'd really appreciate it if you could. Thanks for listening.